Everyone, my name's Jim. I'm an SE for Kentik. What I'm going to talk about, I titled this Obscured by Clouds. I don't know if anybody knows that reference yet, but we're going to get to that. So quick introduction to Kentik for those watching the video later. We've been around 7+ years. We've got hundreds of customers, big names that you can see. We're helping them with their networks, whether they're big service providers, big web scale companies serving a lot of us, for instance. We're using Zoom right now for this. All right, Obscured by Cloud, that's the name of an album by Pink Floyd from 1972. Not my favorite of their albums, but it seems to fit this. So I'm a traditional network engineer. So I've been doing network engineering and architecture since the 90s. I'm used to this sort of thing here. So I've got all my switches, routers, firewalls. I'm watching all the telemetry from those. So the flow data that we've been talking about today, there's fans and temperature and interface counters on all of these. Now, when we move into the cloud, a public cloud that is, we're giving all that responsibility to somebody else. So that's what I mean by obscured by clouds. We've given up any access to that underlying infrastructure, which is a huge pro, right? Somebody else takes care of all of that, and you can focus on your core competency. The downside is that it's obscured. You can't tell what exactly is going on in there. So that's where Kentik is coming in. Most of the time, that's just going to work, right? So application status is good. That means orders are coming in. You're seeing travel being booked or whatever it is your business is doing. Routing and security policies are allowing your traffic. They might not be perfect. Maybe they're not disallowing some traffic that you really should be, but things are working. As a old school network engineer, I did a lot of Visio diagrams. So auto updating maps is a great thing, I think, for understanding how your cloud deployment is functioning. So if you got somebody new on the team that wasn't part of the whiteboarding at first, or if you are doing Visio diagrams or some other diagramming, they're not going to be they might be obsolete by the time you're done drawing them. So I like our mapping. All right, but what happens when it's not working? You want to yell at your cloud, right? So typically that's going to be in an outage situation where you're really stressed out and you want an answer right away. And or it could be a maintenance window. Maybe you're doing this late at night, you're doing a migration, you're moving from your data center, moving an application up, and something didn't work out the way you thought it was. So we want to provide those answers very fast. We do all that work in advance to tag everything. So you're not doing complex queries where you're doing joins in crazy ways to pull in different filters that you want to see. You can just pick out exactly what you want in English, say this security group or these instances, this account. All right, so we're bringing observability to the cloud. One of my colleagues mentioned something like this before, but from the map that we were showing earlier, I know you like demos, so I could switch into the demo for this part. Well, here's a view of our map. So we do bring cloud environments connected to the internet and to on-prem data centers. So it's really a bigger story about people migrating to clouds. Typically, some move some things out at times, but definitely one direction mostly. If I go into one of these clouds, and I'm gonna pick Amazon. All of this infrastructure is interactive. I can dig into traffic on any of these. I think one of our interesting ones is this sock shop. So here I can see where I've got this deployed, what availability zones there are, what subnets I've got. If I want to see traffic for the whole VPC, I'm just going to click Show Details. It's going to pop up here. We get a lot of detail about that, right? If I want to double check something, I could go look there. If I want to look at the traffic in a certain direction, I can do that. If I want to break this out by, say, application, I can click there. Now we're going to see this traffic graph, and it's broken out by application. But I could have picked account ID or instance type or some other dimension. So, application's an easy one to comprehend, though. So, we've got lots of different applications. A lot of times this will just show up as port 443, right? But just below the traffic here is the route table. My mouse doesn't seem to like this surface.
So I'll say there's good granularity of information. Again, obviously they've got a strong networking background, and yeah, we can drill down to stuff that's super familiar. But given your messages around how do you ask the right questions of the thing, maybe I'd love to see the approach from that, right? Why is the sock shop has no actual live traffic at the moment, so it's hard to say there's a problem, but it would be neat to see a demo of coming at it from that approach of application, not communicating to X and then get to something.
Or maybe just a real top level, something's wrong with sock shop. Right. And people get on a call and they're trying to figure out what's going on. So I would come in here to the map, and I just did this over the weekend with a customer that had an incident and help them with some, not exactly this sort of thing, but we went to the sock shop. We took a look at the security group's network ACLs. This is showing denied traffic. So if you remember, the flow logs had accept or deny. So these are all the ones that were denied. And they could be denied by security groups applied to instances, or network ACLs applied to subnets or VPCs.
The one thing that I don't know if I'd say I'd like to see, or I'd be curious if it is somewhere else, is a sense of health. As right now, there's no sort of coloration to indicate that there's an active problem. And again, if you're right now, we know, somebody calls from the service desk, the sock shop's down. You go to the sock shop and it's blue.
Right.
And so then you have to sort of keep going until you find something that is wrong based on your understanding of the application.
Yeah, we could do it either way, right? If it's an non-specific, something seems to be wrong, we can come in here, we can find some traffic being blocked and think, should that be blocked, right? We could go through this line by line and do that. And I'll get around to the other option in a second. Yeah. So I just clicked the top one here. So in this case, we had some traffic to port 23 telnet blocked, and it's because of this security group. So if we want to allow that, we could just edit this security group. Maybe we want to change the application to use port 22, which is already allowed, SSH, more secure than telnet. But if there was something wrong with the sock shop and traffic was being denied, we could open that graph in Data Explorer that you saw Mike open before.
Yep.
That we could go to a much longer time range. We could see if this just started being blocked. maybe we'll see accepts, and then it switches to denies, and that's additional evidence that something changed.
Yeah, and just think of that, like, as the end user, that's my thought process as I'm approaching it, right? It's like, how do I immediately go to a thing is broken? What is that thing made up of? And then you see there are things that look like they are red. Let me look at the red thing. Oh, the red thing is my rule base. And my rule base is kicking up a whole bunch of application turnbacks on the network side. Like, okay, well, why is that? And then from there, I can say, well, now this either is a DDoS, is it an actual live application that's not communicating? Like, just, I'm trying to think of like the demo that would make the flow like the network operator versus the person that already knows I want to get right to the rule set. Because I know there's a thing there. I just love to see that, like the guy that has never used a product before to go like,
Would it make sense to just show some of the links to the insights that get generated?
Yeah, no, I was saying, I think you've shown it from both sides. I love the graph view, and that like the data explorer is probably a really good flow to look at.
Yeah,
from the application perspective.
Right. Yeah.
so if you look at this data explorer, which we did in an earlier session, we've got lots of different dimensions we can pick out, and lots of different metrics, lots of different visualizations we can do, bar charts, pie graphs.
If you want to say like, I want to take this data and I go, I need to see 72 hours.
Yep.
That, like, what does that process look like? Or like if I want to change the timeline to this.
So I'm just going to change the timeline here to, you said 72 hours.
Look at that.
Last 3 days.
Even my Canadian numbers works there. That's 68 hours US.
What's that about?
Yeah, so this was just a query I built while Mike was talking, but all of those things are quick because we've done all that processing
right.
early
No,
on
the responsive is good.
Put all the tags, right?
So then what is the dotted line and the solid line, and why do they begin to diverge at that point?
Yeah, so the dotted line, actually, let me here, I'll get rid of the, yes, so that was a historical line, and then we have the current line. So I'll open up the query again. So that was a historical overlay. We've got the total in there as well. If I hover over this graph, you're going to see that it's broken out by all of these dimensions, right? I came in here because I was going to circle back to a point you were making before about how do we get to that data. We have alerts, and anything that we're watching for here, we can set up an alert for. So we can pick what dimensions we're looking at, what metrics. So those metrics could be bits per second, packets per second, flows, unique IPs that it's talking to. It could be something geographical. How many countries are we talking to? Things like that we can put into an alert. You can set thresholds, either set a static threshold, like if we're back at our e-commerce kind of idea, the sock shop. If I'm doing orders, maybe I have a payment processor I'm sending traffic to. If I see that traffic drop, that's easy to identify with our dimensions and with our filters. We can say if that traffic drops, then I want an alert. We can send out an alert to you in Slack or in email, send it to ServiceNow, whatever kind of way you want to send
like a
it out.
generic webhook, or what's the?
We can send a webhook. Yep.
But I think it's good because if I look at as the end consumer of this stuff, like the alerts are always fantastic. The problem is that if you get an alert set at 75% and it rolls at 74 all night long, no alert, and yet you still have a performance issue or some issue that's occurring that's hasn't hit the signal layer to trigger an activity, but yet there could be a systemic issue that then when they call and they say, hey, Jim, I need to know what's going on. And then you don't go to the alert tab, you go to the object that I got called about, which is the sock shop. And then the sock shop has a message bus problem. So I go into the message bus container and like, oh, here's the problem. You idiot. You put it on a node that doesn't have an egress network, right? And whammo.
Yeah. So so one of the things that we can do with alerting is maybe you want a smaller kind of static threshold, but then you can say, but I also want to know if it's over or under, like if it's over 150% of normal.
Right. If you see like a 95th percent, if I set a threshold of like, 10 milliseconds, but I want to know that 95th percentile of that is actually true versus ignoring peaks, stuff like that.
Yeah.
If there's an application problem, application is slow or something like that, how would somebody go through the process of understanding whether the network is the issue or not? I mean,
Right.
so I'm here, an application engineer, I'm running WordPress and it's not working for me or something like that. How would I go, where would I go to find out whether the network is the problem or not?
I think if you're running that, then you should do a performance test. So I've got a few in here. Well, here's one that I just did for a multi-cloud performance mesh. Let me just zoom in on this so you can see.
Are these the synthetics?
Yeah, so these are synthetic tests, but you could be testing your WordPress site, right? You can test it from around the world, from our agents. You can test it internally if it's a intranet sort of thing. And then
these are benchmarks, synthetic benchmarks running flows, tests from various locations to various locations.
Yep.
And you're monitoring the performance and presenting it here
Yep.
in an easily digestible form.
Yeah.
So what do we need?
But I don't easily digest this. What is the 3 dots? I thought so. One of those dots is red, and it would indicate that there's a problem there. Is that
okay? Yeah. Here's one that had a jitter problem. So 7 milliseconds of jitter probably doesn't matter to most applications, but we set this low so there was something that we could see on here, right? If you had some other metrics or just wanted to know if it was an anomaly, we can easily do that. So both static thresholds and comparing to a baseline.
this wouldn't necessarily tell us that we're packet loss or something like that, right? You're talking specific.
This is 0% packet loss right here.
Oh,
And how much you talk about, like we talked about AI and the careful use of the AI. I'll give you a pass on AI as a marketing term. Static thresholds are cool, but what if it's at 74% all the time, and then it goes like, oh, okay, so that's actually a problem. Do you have a way of learning behavior about like is staying at a particular level or it never gets above a level? Like, what are you doing for anomaly and trend detection? Because anomaly detection is easy. It's just like something really weird is happening right now. Someone got eaten by a shark. But the trend detection would be there's a bunch more sharks that are hanging around the outside.
Could we drill into one of those tests and just kind of show?
Yeah, so we do have a rolling standard deviation on that performance test.
Nice.
So going back to last 15 intervals, so if there's a sudden spike, that's one way we can do that. We can use different thresholds and also say we need to see this happen X number of times in this sort of window. We also have this state of the internet page where we're tracking a lot of different services. If you think that your Zoom is acting up, you can come in here and see if it is from around the world.
Is it just me or is this down?
Right.
And where is that data coming from?
These are from our agents testing from around the world to these services.
Okay.
Do customers, I'm sorry, do customers get the option to opt out of being displayed here, or how does that work?
So if somebody didn't want to be on there, yeah, we would take them off. Well, we get requests all the time for people that want to get put on there.
For public SaaS applications.
Right.
So our customers ask us to add these. So really what this is like, this is really, oh, sorry. Public applications.
Yeah.
So this is us
running tests against all those applications. This isn't, well, this is some of our customers, but this isn't our customer data.
It was one of those that was critical. I was wondering if you could go drill down and tell me what's going on with this one critical application, public SaaS application.
If these are like SaaS offerings, where are the agents actually at?
They're all over the world. So most public clouds, and also we have some eyeball networks, so that we can kind of look at, hey, is a broadband network that's having an issue reaching that, or so if you look at as he drills into this, it'll show a list of all of the different agents that are running tests, right? And so we can see the results for each of those as he scrolls down.
Yeah,
something's going on in Dallas. Apparently, there's.
Yeah, so we break it up by, well, we'll tell you what the certificate expiration is, status code that's been responded, connect time, domain lookup time. We'll graph all of these as well if we went into details. So lots of different information about what's happening there.
So this is showing that latency for 2 of the sites is bad. Jitter is bad for 3 of the sites. Is that how I'd read this?
Yes. So these are identified issues. So among all the agents, these are the 4 that had some kind of a problem, crossed some threshold.
And then you could give the same kind of view for your own enterprise application set. Basically, you could have your own dashboard of.
You can repeat from your campus, from
if
your
you
center to these applications.
Right.
And I'd like to call out, there's two
you can customize the test as well to add your own agents. So now you're comparing from your office or somewhere in your infrastructure to that same service.
There's the HTTP latency, and then there's the average latency. The average latency is your network-based latency, so a trace route underneath. And then the application latency is going to be that HTTP connect. So beyond the TCP connect, getting into the HTTP connect. We're trying to help understand what both of those look like side by side.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm still kind of struggling with using your WordPress server example. And I have flow from one site, flow to another. I have visibility to all of that flow from point A to point B. And all of a sudden, it feels like to the users, this WordPress site is slow or down or whatever. It feels like your answer to that is then we go run a test against that server and see what's going on. Wouldn't we not already have the visibility as to what's going along with the entire path, going on the idea that it is the network or it's not the network? Or is the goal just to rule out the network?
That's sometimes the case, yeah.
I think one really good thing to stop it, maybe it might be to go through and kind of drill into some of the private tests, the private met tests, and to show sort of what's going on there, and then so we can see the traffic between sites. We can see if there's a burst in traffic between sites. So we're mixing the data in terms of latency and the site-to-site bandwidth, that sort of thing. It would be best to use.
Yeah, I could go into private tests.
Yeah. Then you might want to use show up a page load test to show that.
So if we do something like a page load, let's take a look at this. We can get the path. We can get all those stats for how long each part of the transaction is taking.
So these are basically running like a headless Selenium type of test, or are they running out of a virtual, like a workspace type of setup?
This one is not. This one is more like a curl.
Okay.
But we do have or actually, no, this page load is
here.
Actually running the Chromium
right on
browser.
Cool. Yeah.
And that's how we get each part of the DOM. We do have something more like a curl that you could run faster. And then we do have a transaction test that will run Puppeteer,
like
which you can
stage transaction, so that you can test an end-to-end workflow.
Wait for this to load, click this button, etc.
Cool.
Screenshots. Yeah.
Yep, and it'll take screenshots or.
Oh,
if you kind of drill into like one of those results, this is kind of a good visualization of some of the data that we're picking up on here. So you'll notice we're talking about standard deviations. Here's the standard deviations from the rolling baseline. That's the band right there, and you can set that, right? So you can do that. You can have static thresholds for things. And here, this is telling us each of the things that are going on, like the DOM processing time. Each of those things are kind of broken out by that bar graph. So we have this, we have what the status code is, and this is all, over time. So you can see you have a time machine essentially. These tests are running at whatever interval you're setting up. So, it could be every 10 minutes or every 30 or every minute or 15 seconds, whatever. And so you have all this information about the latency, the status code, and then also we actually do have the DOM waterfall, which is on another tab. So if you want to look at that.
So then these synthetics could then trigger an alert based on a behavior set that you say.
Yeah. So in terms of like the WordPress thing that you're talking about, is so you can see like where things are getting stalled, right? So you have a part of that load, things get stalled there. That's, likely whatever the problem is that your users are experiencing. You're seeing this, where you might see something that fails to load or any of that stuff. So, and then again, that was the transaction testing goes one step further in terms of what you can get.
So now you can compare that network test, which would just be a ping for the latency and packet loss and jitter, but we'd also get the trace route, so you can see at each hop what that looks like, and then you can compare it to the application stack from what the browser reported as it was hitting there. So open these up at any point and take a look at your path. Look at when it looked good. Look at when it looked bad. See what the difference is. That'll help you identify where the problem is, if it is a network problem, right? If the network to and from that application looks good, but the application times, it was like time to first byte is really slow, then it's probably something on that server, right?
Do you have any other plug or tie-ins to say like an APM or App Insights or something where you could then put the data side by side? So you can say like my App Insights went wild, or my Dynatrace says something's gone gnarly, and then now I can go to the network because they don't have below the node.
Right. The
But
bump
you
on the
don't.
wire is what they tend to be missing.
Yeah.
And so we have that, our data showing up in New Relic. We do have that partnership.
So you basically push data into the New Relic. Okay. Yeah.
We can. We can send it just about anywhere.
Right.
But we have a close partnership with New Relic for that. Yep.
Yeah, a quick question about the integration with the alarm. Is there an alarm integration that can trigger something if an alarm occurs? And if it's possible to, using a filter by tag, trigger multiple alarm with different, target?
Yeah. So you're asking about what you can alert on, or where to send the alert?
Yeah.
Yes and yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would go to the integrations page.
Oh.
Yeah, that's one. I'll open that or notifications, and also the alerting. So there's a few things opening up here. Let me show where we can send out the alerts. So, and the alerts can be sent with a link to a page describing the event, what thresholds were crossed, when, is it still happening, and also links to the a dashboard. So we could build a custom dashboard that you want to open up every time that that this certain alert fires off. If I add notifications here, you can see some of the ways we can send these out. You mentioned custom webhooks. That'll integrate with anybody that's open to integration, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then lots of the popular services.
Cool.
So send them out any which way. That when it happens. We have a bunch of predefined alert policies, but when I was talking about the Data Explorer, where we had that query interface, anything you can build in there, you can also set a threshold on and then determine when to send out an alert.
Is that
So-
done as you're navigating the Data Explorer, so you can reach a point where it's one of the challenges we often have with these platforms is like, yeah, you can find out this amazing data and then go back to a completely different part of the UI and then create that rule. And so it's
Right.
nicer when it's
So there's a create alert policy.
bingo.
So right there.
Right.
Yeah.
You win the award
I'm
today.
sure that there was a customer that had that exact point, told us,
Yeah.
and we released that feature request.
I had a product manager that didn't, he's like, just go back to the alert page. I'm like, no one's going to go back to the alert page, dude.
Let me just show a couple things very briefly that I didn't get to in my slides. I was going to show in the portal, but we do have this cloud performance monitor that will say, let you deploy an agent in one part of your environment, test back out over to your data center, show you graphically when things are good or bad. So here's one with all green, right? So that's one thing.
What you're basically showing from that is like, if I have a direct connect or a cloud gateway,
Right.
something's not working.
Yeah.
Check it there.
But is it the direct connect, or is it something internal, or is it at the data center side?
Or it's a problem between the chair and keyboard.
Right. Exactly. PubCAC. Here's another view where in the same cloud performance monitor where we're showing traffic to and from different services. So we're doing all this tagging automatically. You don't have to set any of this up. Just give us your flows and we'll show you this. But if you do want the status codes and latency, then you do have to set up one of those performance tests. And then one last quick slide, or actually I'll show it in the product, is this connectivity checker. So I just picked two instances somewhere in my cloud infrastructure and said, can they talk to each other? I gave it a port number, I think it was port 80. And what we're seeing here is that we got a green check for the forward path. On the return path, this is saying, you can't read it from there probably, but it says traffic blocked by network ACLs, outbound ACL. And so anytime you're doing a troubleshooting between two things you know about, this is a place
You
to
can
go.
run all these what if scenarios.
Yeah.